What's up, everyone?
Hey guys.
So we're doing another Travel Therapy Mentor live video this week. We actually thought last time I said we were going to be in Spain right now, but I was wrong. We're still in Portugal. I got the dates wrong, so we're still in Portugal, but we're heading to Spain soon. So this week we're going to be talking about travel therapy contracts, what you can expect in a contract, what to watch out for, what a contract usually looks like. So hopefully we'll be able to go through all that, answer any questions you guys have. As always, feel free to drop those questions in the comments below.
All right. So we'll give some introductions here, and then as always, Jared will get this video shared in a couple of groups. So for those of you guys that may not be familiar with us, my name is Whitney Aiken,
And I'm Jared Cazzazza.
and we are the faces behind Travel Therapy Mentor, as well as our personal blog, Fifth Wheel PT. We're trying to be a little bit quiet tonight because we are in an Airbnb in Portugal, and we are in our host's kitchen. So they're in the next room watching their evening television, so we don't want to interrupt them too much. Each week Jared and I are bringing you different topics on travel therapy from our Travel Therapy Mentor website. Right now we are actually traveling out of the US. We are traveling around Europe for about 15 weeks. And we spent the last 2 weeks in Portugal, and then after this we go to Spain for 2 weeks, and then we're going to be traveling east around Europe. So just as a quick introduction to kind of us and our story, for those of you guys that may or may not be familiar, a lot of people have been asking us, are we traveling outside of the US? Are we traveling in Europe for work? And we're not. We're not traveling for work, we're traveling for fun. We are travel physical therapists, so we travel within the US as travel PTs for work, and we take different contracts around the US. But right now we've been using the flexibility of being travel therapists and having higher income as well as having more time off to be able to travel around for leisure, for fun. So we're traveling in Europe completely for fun. The only work that we're doing right now is on our website on Travel Therapy Mentor. Coming to you right now live for travel therapy educational videos. That's the only work we're doing.
Writing articles, answering questions, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so just kind of our online business, but not really any kind of actual PT work or anything like that. So for a lot of you guys that had that question, that's kind of the heads up on that. But yeah, Jared's getting this video shared in a couple groups so that more people can join on with us tonight live. And I know that some of you guys may catch this later on the replay, which is awesome. Because unfortunately we're 5 hours ahead right now, so we couldn't really do it at the most convenient time for those of you guys in the States, in the US. So hopefully, if you guys are tuning in live, just say hey in the comments if you're connection. So let us know if you're tuning in, if you can hear us. Or if we're kind of cutting out. We'd really appreciate knowing whether you can hear us or not. The internet is not the greatest at our Airbnb. So we're kind of in the kitchen right now, which is kind of near the router, I think. So I see Ryan is tuning on. Hi, Ryan. If anybody else is tuning on, if you could just let us know if you can hear us or not, if we're cutting out or not. Ryan says to Jared, where's the short sleeve button down? He's got a t-shirt on today, Ryan.
Yep. Trying to wear different clothes for these videos, Ryan.
So if anybody else is tuning in, we'd love if you would just say hey and let us know if you can hear us or not, because again, our Wi-Fi is not too great in Portugal right now. But yeah, in just a minute, we'll kind of jump in and start talking about our travel therapy topic for this week, which is talking about understanding a travel therapy contract, basically understanding the written contract part of taking a travel therapy job. So, a little bit about that. So basically, when you jump into travel therapy and you decide to take a job or a contract, you're going to receive a written contract from your travel therapy company. Oh no, Josie says it's cutting out. I hope you guys can hear us. We'll keep trying and seeing. I don't know if I can see anywhere where our connection is. So basically, we'll keep talking and we'll hope that you guys can see it later. If for some reason it's not working well enough and we find out later the video sucked, we can re-record it later, either not live or whatever, but I hope you can hear some of what we're saying. So when you decide to accept a travel therapy job or contract, you're going to receive a written contract from your travel therapy company, which is going to have all the details of your contract. It's important that you have as many details in this contract as possible so that you as the therapist or as the clinician will be protected, because this is, you need it in writing, what is going to be expected of you, your start dates, that kind of thing. So we're going to go through all the different things that you would look for in this written contract, okay?
Yeah, so the first thing that's usually in there is the start and end dates. And you want to make sure those are right, because there's a lot of mistakes that can be made on the recruiter side or on the company side, or sometimes even just a mistake with the company and the facility itself, like, things get mixed up.
Just a misunderstanding, yeah.
Yeah, so just make sure that the start and end dates are the start and end dates that you want.
And that sounds silly, like that sounds like duh, like my start and end dates, that's pretty clear cut. We actually worked with a traveler once that he thought verbally they had said this was going to be his end date, but on his written contract it said this was going to be his end date, and he and the travel or the facility didn't really keep good track of that, and he ended up working days over what his written contract said, and we still don't know to this day whether he got paid for this or not.
Yeah, it was a company that we've never worked with, but they were saying that he's probably not going to get paid for those days, so it was kind of weird, but just make sure that those dates are right.
Yeah, so just mind your P's and Q's, double check your contract, make sure your start and end dates are correct.
Another thing along with those start and end dates is it should have in there any time off requests that you need. So before we start any contract, or before a traveler starts any contract, you want to make sure any days that you might need off for things like weddings or birthdays or holidays or whatever, you want to make sure those are listed in there. Usually that's right under the start and end dates. So whatever days you need off, just make sure that those are listed in there somewhere.
Yeah, so if you know in advance that you're already going to have a wedding coming up or a certain time off that you need, try your best to get that written into the contract, because it's not always guaranteed once you start a job. If you just think, oh yeah, I'll just ask them the week before if I can leave early on Friday or take that Monday off, it might not be allowed.
Yeah.
So you need to try your best to get that approved in advance and written to the contract.
Yeah, so something that some travelers do, we've never done this, but some travelers like to have 3-day weekends or 4-day weekends at some point along their contract. So they might write in there or have written in there 2 days off or 3 days off during this contract to be specified later.
Mm-hmm.
But something in there about having those days off. So then after that, you can, once you have a clear plan, you can actually negotiate that with the facility and say, okay, my contract said these 2 days, I have 2 days and I'm going to use one here and one here.
Yeah, so just try to, if at all possible, have that written in. If you don't know for sure, like okay, I'm going to need to schedule a doctor's appointment or I'm going to need to do whatever and it has to be planned later, it's not the end of the world, but it's not guaranteed. Your facility could always say, no, you're a contract employee, like you don't get days off.
Yeah.
So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, what's written in that contract is basically the final word on anything like that. So they could be nice and still let you do it, and some places are very nice and understanding, but some might not be. So yeah. That's important. The next thing that will be on there is pay, and that's broken down into hourly, so a taxable hourly rate, and as well as stipends. So that can be listed in a few different ways. Sometimes it'll be broken down into weekly stipends for housing, meals, and incidentals, and it can all be separate. So it'll be like this amount weekly for housing, this amount weekly for meals, and this amount for incidentals. Sometimes it'll be broken down into an hourly number for all three of those combined. So it might be $20 an hour taxed and $20 an hour untaxed, or $25 an hour untaxed. So it's listed in different ways depending on what company you're working with, but make sure that's in there, the stipends that you've agreed to. And when we get our contract, we always take the hourly rate and subtract out taxes, add in the stipends, and make sure that the take-home pay is what we have agreed to with the recruiter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so quite often, if you guys are new to travel therapy, quite often the recruiter will tell you the pay in the hourly, which is taxed, plus the stipend, and then they'll give you a ballpark figure for what you can expect to take home weekly. Now, if you want to double check them, and usually what we do, a lot of people on our website will send us, we offer to look at pay packages for you guys if you have questions about it and you want us to look over it for you. And quite often when they send it to us, we'll just run a quick calculation so we can help to determine if it looks good to us or not. So the way that we do that quick calculation is we'll take the hourly, which might be $20 an hour, multiply it by 40 hours, then multiply it by about 0.75 to take out about 25% in taxes. Then add that number to the stipend number.
Yeah, and that won't be
Yeah.
exact for taxes, but it's a rough estimate.
Yeah, so that's the way you guys can do it as well if you want to double check your own paychecks.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit about pay. If I know somebody thought Kiara said it froze. If you guys that are tuning in, I see a few of you are on live right now. If you could just let us know if you can hear us or not, or if it's cutting out. I know that the connection is not really great here because we're on sort of low quality Wi-Fi.
Yep. How's it going, Lauren and Justin? Good to see you guys.
Yeah. So just let us know if you are tuning in, if you can hear us. I hope you can.
Yep. So the next thing that would be on there is reimbursements. So things like reimbursement for, sometimes companies will have you pay out of pocket for things like drug tests, background checks, that kind of thing. And then sometimes will be a reimbursement for that. Most of the companies that we work with, they just pay for that up front. So, but sometimes that will be a reimbursement. Then there are reimbursements for things like licensing. So whatever state you got licensed in, you have to pay the application fee. You have to pay the fee to have each state send a copy of your license in good standing to the new state. You have to pay for the board to transfer your exam scores to the new state, and you have to pay for usually your transcript from grad school to be sent to the new state. So all those things cost money, which you can be reimbursed for. And then another thing that's often on there is beginning and ending travel. So say you're moving from Virginia to Texas, and they pay you mileage based on how far you're going. So like,
these are like the relocation fees, like traveling, like the relocation fee.
Yeah. So it'll be like usually it's a mileage based thing where it'll be like 50 cents a mile from your home state to the travel location to help you pay for costs like gas and lodging and stuff on the way.
Or if it was in Hawaii, it could be a plane ticket to get out there. So sometimes in your paycheck, or I'm sorry, not your paycheck, in your contract, they'll include the pay and they'll also list out any reimbursements that they've agreed to give you. Because a lot of, up until this point that you get the written contract, a lot of this is verbal. A lot of this is like still back and forth, like emails or phone calls with your recruiter. So you want to make sure that everything you talked about with your recruiter is actually in the written contract that you sign. So the reimbursements, the pay, exactly how you want it broken down.
Yep. So something else in the pay section, it should have an area where it talks about overtime pay and holiday pay. So we've talked before about overtime rates. I think that was in the beginner mistake video we did. Hourly rate to make the overtime worth it for you. As far as holiday pay, sometimes companies will pay extra for holidays, but it just depends on the facility. Some facilities don't even pay their employees extra for holiday pay. So if the facility's not paying their employees extra, they usually won't pay the traveler extra either. So it just depends on the facility and the company.
Yeah, so these are some things that you might want to look for in your contract: the pay, the hourly, the stipend, the reimbursements, the overtime pay, and the holiday pay. If you don't see those things listed, you might want to go out of your way to ask your recruiter, well, what about this? Does this need to be listed in the contract? That sort of thing. If at all possible, try to get it in writing.
Yep, don't sign anything that you're not completely comfortable with.
Yeah.
That's very important.
Yeah. Okay, the next thing you might want to look for in your contract is a cancellation policy. Now, this is in regards to the traveler if you want to end a contract early, or the facility if they need to end your contract early.
Yep.
So ideally, you want to look for a 30-day cancellation.
Yep.
Some companies will only agree to a 2-week or 14-day cancellation. Ideally, we recommend you try to push your recruiter or push the facility to allow you a 30-day cancellation clause, because if the facility decides, oh, we don't need you anymore, and they only give you a 2-week notice, well, that doesn't give you very much time to, 1, find a new contract, 2, figure out your housing. So you really, if at all possible, want to try to push to get a 30-day cancellation clause.
Yeah, so 2 weeks is the standard for the most times. We have always gotten 30 days just in case something goes wrong. It'll give us some time to figure out our next assignment or where we're going to be going and things like that. But remember that this comes from the facility, not necessarily the company, the travel company. So the facility has to agree that they will allow 30 days basically to give you 30 days notice. So if they don't agree to that, then sometimes you just have to pass on that contract. There's nothing the travel company can do if the facility won't agree to those terms.
Or if you really want the contract and you think it's a low chance that you're going to get canceled, go ahead and take it. We have taken some. I think we've had at least one that had 2-week cancellation because the facility, I think that's enough, because the facility wouldn't agree to it. So it's kind of like a pros and cons thing. So, if you think, oh, well, they've had continuous travelers for years, it's low likelihood they're going to hire somebody perm this go round. Low likelihood I'm going to get canceled. Or 2, if you have enough money saved or you have the flexibility that you don't care if you get a 2-week cancellation, it's not that big of a deal, but ideally try to get that 30 days if you can.
And as far as cancellations go, we've been traveling 4 years now. I've never been canceled a contract, and Whitney's only been canceled 1 time. So it's some people have bad luck with that, and it's definitely hit or miss.
And we've only canceled once, and it was actually not even really a cancel. It was like we asked to extend, and then we just decided not to extend. Sort of thing.
So normally this doesn't even come into play. Hopefully, you don't even have to worry about it. But it is nice to have that 30 days just in case.
Okay. Another thing we want to talk about is guaranteed hours. So you want to find out if your contract has guaranteed hours or not, and if that's written in the contract. So guaranteed hours means usually we hope to have a guaranteed 40 hours, meaning even if the census is low or the caseload is low or whatever, or there's a incident or there's a holiday or there's a natural disaster and you don't get to work a full 40 hours, the guaranteed hours would say that you would still get paid for 40 even if you don't work 40.
Yep, and companies handle that differently, so that depends on the travel company. One company we work with gives us a 40-hour guarantee, and that 40-hour guarantee means that no matter what happens, as long as it's not our fault, if we didn't ask for those hours off, if we don't get 40, we still get paid for 40. So we get our full hourly pay and our stipends.
Yeah, including holidays, including inclement weather, including anything. We've had plenty of, we've had hurricane days, we've had snow days. Now there are some companies that do it differently. They won't include holidays.
So some companies, the 40-hour guarantee only includes like a low census, or if they send you home because there's cancellations. If it's an outpatient clinic and your whole afternoon cancels and you go home early, then that would be a 40-hour guarantee. But if there's a holiday, they don't count that. So that's something to clarify with the travel company.
Yes, definitely
what
ask.
does that 40-hour guarantee actually mean? And we really recommend the 40-hour guarantees. We've never taken a contract that doesn't have that in there.
We really benefited from it too. We've gotten paid for lots of hours we didn't work.
Yeah, I wrote an article about that. I think I've gotten I can't remember the exact number, but it was something like over 100 hours I've gotten paid for that I didn't actually work. So
yeah, we've gotten paid for Thanksgivings, for Christmases, for New Year's. We've gotten paid for hurricanes, ice storms, snowstorms. We've gotten paid for a lot where we sat at home and drank hot chocolate. But I will tell you that it's becoming more and more common for facilities to not agree to a 40-hour guarantee, especially SNFs. A lot of them are cutting it back to where they're only guaranteed 32 hours. So again, you have to weigh the pros and cons. If you really want a specific contract, you really want a specific job, and they're not going to guarantee the 40 hours, well, you just might have to accept that you're going to get maybe sometimes cut, or maybe sometimes not make as much money some weeks.
Yeah, it just depends on you, your situation, your budget, all those things. For us, it's always most important that we make the full amount, so we always have 40 hours. If the facility wouldn't agree to that, we just wouldn't take the contract. But for some travelers, they can get by on 32. They're not trying to save as aggressively as we are, and it's not a big deal to them. So it just depends on you and your situation.
Yeah, so again, just look for this in the written contract.
Next would be your expected hours and your schedule. So usually this is written in there. If you're expected to work Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 with an hour lunch, it'll say something like that. Or, 4/10s or whatever your schedule would be. That's usually written in the contract somewhere.
Yeah, and not always. We've had some where it's not written in explicitly, but it will state how many hours you're expected to work. So it might say guarantee 32 hours, expected 40 hours. So it means you're going to be scheduled 40 hours regardless of whether it was 4/10s or it was 5/8s. regardless of how it's scheduled, it'll just say how many hours you're expected to work, and that's important to have in there, because if it only said guaranteed 32 hours, then that doesn't even show that they were supposed to schedule you for 40, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and we would really recommend getting the hours, the actual schedule written in there, because we've heard of some travelers that have issues where it's like, this never happened to us, but say they were told verbally they were going to work Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, but then the facility, something happens, they lose their weekend coverage or something, and they're like, okay, now we need you to work Monday or Wednesday through Sunday or something like that. And if you don't have that written in there, you don't really have much recourse to get out of that. It's not in the contract. All it said was 40 hours. It didn't say which days or which hours. So it's good to have the schedule written in there.
Right, so something to consider. Okay, the next thing we want to talk about is we, again, have never dealt with this, but we have heard of other people getting something written in there about a reduced hours fee or a reduced productivity fee. So these are places in the contract where the company is basically doing what is it, CYA?
Yeah.
Where they're covering themselves, where they're basically like, oh, if you don't work a certain number of hours, we're going to take some of this money back, or if you don't meet a certain productivity, we're going to take some of this money back.
Now obviously the ones with the reduced hours fee, it wouldn't be a 40-hour guarantee, right? Because if it did, then you would still get paid for 40 no matter what. But if it doesn't have that 40-hour guarantee and you're expected to get 40 and then you don't get 40, sometimes they'll take the stipends away, stipends and the hourly pay, and you'll make less there.
I have seen some where it was a clause written in where it talked about if the traveler cancels or the traveler takes days off. So if I
called in sick
or I wrote in my contract that on May 12th and 13th I need off because I'm going to a wedding. So obviously that week, because I requested off 2 days, I'm not going to get my full pay. So they just have a clause written in there that says, okay, we're not only going to reduce your hourly for those days, but we're going to reduce your stipend for those days too, because you didn't work a full week. Yeah. So that's usually if you request the time off, as long as you have the 40-hour guarantee. Now, if it has the 32-hour guarantee and you don't work a full 40 hours, then they're going to reduce your stipend and your hourly. So this is a reduced hours fee clause. Now the reduced productivity fee, we recommend that nobody signs contracts that say explicitly like you have to meet this productivity or your rate or your pay is going to be reduced. We have heard of this happening, but it's not ideal because these are usually the SNFs that are like, oh yeah, you need to be 92% productive, and if you're not, we're going to cut your pay.
Yeah.
And this is not an ideal situation because basically this is saying like, oh, you mean if my schedule gets really busy or have a ton of evals or discharges on my day, you're not taking into account the fact that this was a busier week than last week, and you're going to reduce my pay for it?
Yeah, so they can really load you up on things that take a lot of paperwork, and either you work off the clock or you make less money, and it's not a good situation to be in. So we've never taken a contract that had any kind of productivity standard written in or any kind of reduction in pay based on productivity, and we would recommend definitely not doing that.
Yeah, so if you see that written in a contract that says you're going to have reduced pay if your productivity doesn't meet a certain standard, we would encourage you to try to get that wiped out. Don't agree to that. Either take a different job or have them wipe that out of there and say, I'm not going to agree to that written on my contract until it's taken out. Yeah. Because it should always be a case-by-case basis in our personal opinions. So that's most of what we want to talk about tonight. I hope you guys could hear some of this. I know that the connection wasn't great. If you guys could please just comment and let us know if you could hear 50% of what we're saying, 90%, any of what we're saying. If you can't hear what we're saying, we can go back later and do like a pre-recorded just rundown of whatever we talked about. Just kind of a downside of us traveling out of the country right now.
Yeah.
It's not great.
Yeah, we could always do a pre-recorded video, but yeah, just let us know. If you guys could like this video, that'd be awesome. Yeah. More people will see it that way. Next week, we are going to be in Spain. 100% sure this time. We'll be in southern Spain next week. We'll try to do the video again same time next week.
Sunday, yeah.
As long as we have a decent Wi-Fi connection.
Hopefully we'll have better Wi-Fi next week. We're pretty sure we will, but...
Yep. One thing I want to mention, we reached 4,000 followers on Instagram this week. Travel Therapy Mentor, and we're doing a giveaway for a Airbnb gift card. So if you guys go to Travel Therapy Mentor